A smart real estate choice today can make a big difference in your income tomorrow. In today's video, we're going to be focusing on how to make a purchase in a smart way so that down the road, you've got all of your options in front of you. You can sell it, you can short-term rent it, and in our area here along the Emerald Coast, you can even long-term rent it. Let's get into it.
What's up, everybody? It's Kristen and Andrew with the original Life on the Emerald Coast channel, and today we're going to talk about 7 things to consider when purchasing your home here on the Emerald Coast.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm looking for personally when I'm purchasing a home is, am I future-proofing myself? Am I protecting myself for all different scenarios so that I don't end up, bankrupt or something down the road, which, obviously it could happen, right? But I'm trying to protect that as much as possible. So some of the things that we're looking for, or at least that I'm looking for, are the things that we're going to be talking about today. So that's what these 7 things are going to be. It's going to be protecting you and just making your investment a little bit safer for all markets down the road.
And some of them might surprise you.
Let's get into them. So the very first thing that I'm going to look at whenever I'm looking at properties, and something I suggest for all of you that are a little bit more risk averse, is look at all of your options right from the get-go. Ask your real estate professional, if it's us, awesome, we run these for people all the time, if there is a long-term option to rent this and if there is a short-term option to rent this. So in our area, we've got a lot of areas where you cannot short-term rent your property. And so even though that might not be the best option, it's still something to look at because you'd be really surprised that some of these properties rent out very, very well short-term because of, different factors of proximity to the water, the type of property it is, just where it's located and things like that. So whenever I'm looking at a property, I'm not just looking at the actual mortgage it's going to cost me in and of itself and what the price of that property is. I'm also checking out the rental numbers for long-term and the rental numbers for short-term if possible. It's actually funny, when I bought my first house, I think my real estate agent thought I was nuts because every property I went into, I was like, what are the rental numbers on this? And he's like, aren't you living in this full time? I'm like, yes, but I am trying to protect myself for the future. And this is a very experienced real estate professional. This is far before I became a realtor. I was just back in the military back then. And basically he was like, nobody's ever done this. And I'm like, you work with people all the time and nobody's considered these numbers. It is one of the most important things that I did. So when I moved into my first property, the mortgage was very inexpensive, and I knew that if I had to turn around and turn around and rent it down the road, I instantly had $300 or $400. I think it was about $350 of rental income coming in, boom, overnight. So this way, if something happened, if I got moved out of the area, if I got deployed, or if anything happened that I needed to get out of this home, I knew I was covered, even if the market took a little bit of a downturn on the sales side. Typically, the rental side stays fairly afloat. Now, what I was not looking for back then was short-term rentals to see if it was short-term rental viable. That is something that I've now added in whenever I buy properties, and it's something that we suggest to you as well.
So if that's you and you're looking to purchase a home here on the Emerald Coast, well, guess what? We're real estate agents. We can help you, and we would love to help you. So some of the things that we do, just like you said before, is not only run comps on the property to make sure you're not overpaying for it, but we can run those rental numbers, both long-term and short-term. We can also hook you up with property managers down the road if that's something that you want to do. So all of our information is going to be popping up here on the screen. Voila! And give us a call.
Now that our shameless plug is over, let's get on to reason number 2.
So number 2 on our list is future-proofing. So there's 2 kind of different ways to look at this. One is being open to the idea when it is time to sell, of possibly renting it out. So say your business or the military just told you, hey, you're going to the Emerald Coast of Florida, and you're so excited you buy a house. You buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, and you love it. It's great. And then your job says 2 years later, oh, hey, by the way, now you're moving to California. Well, 2 years is kind of that make or break area where you're not sure if you sell it, if you're going to be able to break even. So being open to possibly renting it not only helps you from losing money, but it also can help you actually get some passive income. Funny story. Well, it's funny now, but not so funny then. So my husband and I's first house was in Crestview. He got a job. He was stationed at Eglin, and we lived up there. Well, when we purchased the home in 2006, we purchased right after the peak of the market. So we were still a little bit in the good there. But when we wanted to sell it, it had been after the crash. So we were upside down about $40,000, which sucked. But, we wound up selling it anyway. And I really wish we wouldn't have, because we would have been sitting on a gold mine had our real estate agent said, hey, instead of losing $40,000, why don't you rent it out? Because we could have made money on that puppy. So lessons learned. Lessons learned.
Now, obviously, there's always risk when you're renting out a property, whether it's short-term or long-term, but with a solid property manager on either front, and they are two different animals, two different beasts, if you will, short-term rental managers and long-term rental managers. If you have a good one, you don't really have to worry about as much. If they're taking care of everything, something breaks, they just do the thing. You give them that kind of autonomy, and they just let you know, hey, the fridge broke, we're replacing the fridge, here's some choices, and they make it really easy for you. You should never have to worry about this rental again. And in our area, we've got one of the best long-term rental markets, at least in the kind of the Fort Walton Beach, Niceville, Crestview, kind of our main hubs around the Air Force bases, because there are so many people in this exact situation where they're coming in and out every 2 years. They don't want to purchase. They just want to rent while they're down here. So it keeps our rental market strong. And yes, I can only imagine owning a home in Crestview right now that you bought in 2006.
It just sold the end of last year. I was dumb and I ran the numbers and I really shouldn't have.
Yeah, that's not a good feeling.
But the other part of that future proofing is diversifying our portfolio. So let's say in that same crash, we had friends that lost a lot of money in the stocks and bonds, things like that. And they lost their kids' college savings because that's what they were doing. And, it was all in that market, if you will. So if they had a home that they could have done a refinance on, pulled some equity out, they wouldn't have lost anything. But having those different kinds of investments out there, real estate, stocks, bonds, whatever else there is, it's just nice because you have a little safety net.
I'm actually very curious how many other people have been in the same situation as you.
Hopefully not many.
I would love to hear. If you guys have a situation like that, put it down in the comment section. This will help other people that maybe are starting their investment journey to see that. I've been very fortunate. I've kept every property that I have purchased, and I rent them all out. And it's great because that passive income is awesome. It is a little bit nerve-wracking when you're making those purchasing decisions, particularly early on. But if you kind of pad yourself with the safety tips that we're going over today, it'll really help you in the future.
Yes. I hope no one comments below for that, but if you do, it'll make me feel so much better. So reason number 3 is kind of, we'll call it family planning, if you want to call it that. So let's go back to that situation where you bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. You just get married, you start your family, and you realize on kid number 2 that house is getting small.
It's getting tight.
It's getting tiny. It's all the toys are taking over. So you're like, listen, we need to get a 4-bedroom. So instead of selling that 3-bedroom house, you could do a couple things. You could refinance, pull the equity out, put it down in a 4-bedroom, and then rent that puppy out to make up for it and just have that, like we've talked about this whole video, is having that investment there. But it's the other option is, you're renting it out and say, your kids grow up, they go off to college, and now it's you and your spouse again. You want to downsize from that 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom or whatever you have now. You can go back to that property, which is probably, if not paid off, pretty darn close to it, and go back to it.
If you want to at that point.
If you want to.
Which will be a hard decision to go from that from upsizing back down to downsize. But if you fell in love with the home enough, that's definitely a viable option. And by this point, you might also realize that it is a cash flow monster and that you just want to continue keeping that money coming in.
True. You have options.
Yeah.
So the 4th reason is for potential of appreciation. So not only do sale prices go up, but rental prices do too. It's all with inflation and the economy and all that stuff. So, rental prices aren't stagnant either. In Florida, and I'm going to cheat and look at my notes, the average home value in 2013 was $144,000. I'm rounding down a little bit, but $144,000. Now, that same home in 2023 increased up to $381,900.
That's a big difference.
Yes, that is a huge difference. That is
over double.
It's in fact a almost $24,000 a year appreciation.
It's almost like having a little part-time job happening.
Yes.
And that's kind of the beauty of owning a home in general. You guys are watching this channel. You already know that, or else you wouldn't be watching us. I'm confident. But that is one of the big advantages as well. So if you're taking properties and you're buying one with the intent of maybe renting it out later, what have you, not only are you getting that small little piece of monthly income, but you're also gaining this equity that you don't see right away, but you can pull from at really any point, through a cash out refinance or even a HELOC, which is, kind of like a credit card against your home that you can kind of keep paying off and taking up and down, stuff like that. So you definitely have options, and that equity is a very big reason for that.
But I'm crying on the inside a little bit because those numbers were very close to our Crestview house. So just tier.
Well, you know for the future. So now that we got onto some of the main topics there, what are some of the things we should be looking for in the actual property itself? Well, they say it all the time in real estate: location, location, location. It's the three most important things. I know it's only one thing, but you guys get the point. Location is absolutely paramount, especially if you're going to be considering long-term as well as short-term here along the Emerald Coast. You know, having a short-term rental in somewhere like Fort Walton Beach or Destin, Okaloosa Island, even Mary Esther, where it's closer to the water on the map, obviously, and in real life, is generally going to be better for short-term rentals than something, let's say, up in Crestview. Now, you could still short-term rent in Crestview. They do have some. They just don't generally produce near like the other ones do. So taking that into consideration is very important. And also looking at things like, what are the amenities that are around? How close are you to the actual water? What is the community like? And, you know, kind of taking safety into the equation as well, safety and crime. Now, that's not something we're allowed to speak on as real estate professionals, which is crazy in my opinion, but those are the rules.
Right.
But there are a lot of tools and websites out there that you can search for these things. So I would definitely consider all of those. And if you guys are doing any of this research on your own, maybe you're not ready to quite talk to a real estate professional or call us yet or what have you, and you want to know, hey, how am I going to know how does this thing rent out short term? There's a great website that we use called airdna.co. And this is going to give you kind of an average of different Airbnbs and short-term rentals that are similar to that property in that area. Mm-hmm. So that can give you a little bit of a leeway there, although there are a lot of expenses to consider with that. So go ahead and reach out to us if you guys need to. We've got a cool spreadsheet we can send you where you can kind of plug in all of the numbers and it will break down everything, because there are some expenses on a short-term rental that you're not going to see on a long-term rental.
So the sixth thing to consider is your property condition. So maybe looking at the home that is not, upgraded to the top of the top, and, not buying that best house on the block. Let's buy one that's a second or two tier down, so that you're one, not paying the highest price, and two, you can put your touch on it and, upgrade it while you're living in it, so that when you do go to rent it out, you can rent it out for a lot more than you could have if you had done nothing. So that lipstick on the pig thing. So, you could do some things like that where you're just painting and, maybe do a counter here and there, or, so that down the road, if you wanted to, you could do even more.
And this serves as a double purpose as well, because if you do upgrade it while you're living in it and you decide you get orders or you move away 2-3 years later or ready to upgrade, whatever the situation is, you also have that option to sell it for considerably more than you purchase it, even after 2 short years, because you improved the property. And you generally, and this is a generalized statement, you're going to pay top dollar for the one that's already fixed up, and you're going to pay, kind of the market, whatever, for one that's not 100% beefed up. But once you beef it up, it kind of bumps it up to that level. So you might not make a killing on it, although that is it's actually pretty popular out here to, most of our flippers that we work with all the time, they're generally looking at anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000 per flip. That's the average. That's not like what they're hoping for and they're like, ooh, cross my fingers. That's what's happening. So if you're able to do these things while you're living in it, it will also protect you in that aspect in case you're like, hey, I want to sell this and I want to buy my next forever home, and I need all the money out of it. I don't want to refinance it. I don't want to mess with it. It gives you that option as well on top of the long-term rent. So it's sort of a live-in BRRRR strategy for those of you guys that know the BRRR method. That's sort of what we're kind of talking about here.
And if you're making those upgrades while you're living in it, you get to enjoy them as well.
Yeah, which is always nice and kind of nerve-wracking, especially if you have to do like a kitchen. Oh, I've never done a kitchen in a house I was living in, but I hear horror stories all the time because they're like, we have to eat out all the time. And I'm like, that sounds awesome, but I don't know.
We kind of did that with our last house, but we just had picnics in our living room all the time.
See, you can have picnics in your living room with this strategy.
Yeah. It's fun if you have kids.
And number 7 on our list is kind of one that gets overlooked quite a lot by people that just aren't thinking about it, is a tax benefits. So you've obviously got the tax benefits of depreciating the property. This is whenever you purchase it and you're purchasing something for rental purposes or what have you, you can depreciate that property. Now, if you're going to buy it and move into it, you don't have that particular benefit, but you do have benefit in some tax, tax benefit. It's a benefit like 8 times, but with the closing costs and everything that you put into the property, and then your interest and things like that. But also down the road, let's say you do rent it, short-term, long-term, doesn't matter. Now you've got the option a couple of years later, a year later, whatever it is, to 1031 exchange that property, which is a tax deferment that we have. And this is nationwide. It's not just in Florida or in our area or anything like that, that you can defer paying the capital gains on this property as long as you purchase another one. So here's just one example that we actually just had one of our clients do. They bought a beautiful home out in the 30A area, and they decided, hey, we're going to move. They bought another house. They rented out this first home. A little bit down the road, about 2 years later, they called us recently, 3-4 months ago. We're currently trying to find them something new. And that's what they're going to be doing, is 1031 exchanging this property to get out of those taxes, get a better investment. The cash flow is a little bit better because we found something nice for them. And then now they're going to be able to dodge all those capital gains. So that is something to consider as well, is that you can kind of upgrade that property. You can have this thing as a rental, making you money while you're living. Let's say you buy a condo, right? Because that's sort of the situation they're in. You buy a condo, you keep upgrading that condo with your 1031 exchange when it makes sense to better and better cash flowing properties as you gain a little bit of equity and things like that. And then when your kids are out of the house, you're ready to move into a condo. Well, you've now exchanged up your property up to a certain point that you're now living the condo that you want to live in, right? So that is another great benefit right there. I hope you guys gained some sort of value out of this video. If you guys did, please hit that like button. It really helps us figure out the direction and the information you guys want to take. This one's a little bit different than some of our other videos that we generally do. We wanted to kind of try it out and see how it is. So vote for us with that thumbs up button, or even that thumbs down button. If you're like, hey, I didn't like this, that's perfectly fine too. It's not going to hurt my feelings, maybe a little tiny bit. But definitely, if you are not a subscriber, you're not a viewer of our stuff, go check out some of our other videos. In fact, we're going to place one of our videos in an end screen right after this, so you can go there to kind of see what we normally do, so you can kind of see a little bit of both. And if you like what you see, make sure you subscribe, and we will see you guys next week.